Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth. I'm Cesar Carino, your host, and our guest today is a very, very well-known man about town, Louis Graff. Louis, you know, it's almost impossible for us to think that you're sitting down because you're always active, you're always walking around, and everyone knows who you are, where you are, and what you do, and all of that kind of a thing. Today we'd like to know about the part of Louis Graff that we don't know anything about. Could we start just for a minute here about the very, very early Louis Graff? You know, when you were born, where you were born, who your parents are, brothers, sisters, and all of those other kinds of things. Do you remember those things, Louis?
Some of it, yes.
You remember some of it. This is going to be a fun one because, Louis, have you ever been serious in your life?
Once in a while.
Once in a while.
But it's no fun.
When that's no fun, right. Tell us when you were born, where you were born, and all of that.
Well, I was born in Granger Township. I was born in the same house that my mother was. And my doctor that delivered me was my uncle.
And who was that?
Uncle Ori Cumberworth from Remsen.
From Remsen Corners?
Yes. And his wife was my aunt, and she gave me my first bath.
She gave you your first bath?
That was July 2nd, 1926.
1926? Mm-hmm. Wow, well, that isn't too terribly old. You're only 72 years old.
That's what I'm going to be.
Wow, wow, wow. That's not too terribly old at all. And I didn't think you were that old, actually, but July 2nd, 1926. Mm-hmm. And who were your parents?
My parents were Louis G. Graff and Eva Viola Cotting Graff.
From Cottingville?
No, from Medina, from Granger. Was the farm that I was born on and she was born on, was her dad's farm.
And that is not where the word Cottingville came from, right?
Well, it might have way back. We just found some history. It's in the Medina County book where Cottings, well, it was called Cotting now, but it was called Cottington. And that was the original name, and they settled and helped settle Granger.
They helped settle Granger.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you came to Wadsworth when?
I come here in 1946 after I got out of the service.
In other words, you've been here for a good 52 years in Wadsworth. Now, what brought you to Wadsworth? Now, obviously, Granger isn't too terribly far from Wadsworth, but what brought you to Wadsworth?
Well, let's see, when I went to the service, my dad sold the farm, and his brother owned Wadsworth elevator down here across the tracks where Domino's Pizza just
right,
moved
and his
from.
brother was who?
George.
George
Graff.
George Graff.
And so then my dad come down here and worked for him.
Wadsworth Feed.
Yes. Phone number was 94.
That's right. That's right, exactly.
But so that's what got me down here to Wadsworth. Then when I come back, they was living on Pardee Street, and that's from here to there. I moved from there to the house I'm in now and haven't moved since.
You haven't moved since. Tell us a little bit about your earlier days here in Wadsworth, and we'd like to hear more about your days when you were in Granger, because I think there's some important things there which will help us to understand who you are and why you are in the business that you're in right now. But, and all of your relatives, the relatives that you have and the kinds of relationships and so forth. After you got out of the service, which was, what, 1946, and at that time you were 21 years old, or
about that.
About 21 years old. You didn't jump into hardware right then, did you?
No.
What did you do?
Well, when I come back, I took a month and a half or so off, and then I went to work down at the injector. That was about in November. Then I worked there until July 1st, and they always had a close down for 2 weeks. Of course, I wasn't there hardly long enough, so I got a week. So then I worked after I come back from vacation, then I worked about August, middle of August, and then they had like they have every year, they have a layoff. So the farmers can go do their work, which a lot of farmers work down here from Crescent, Sterling, all around the area. So when they laid me off, I went down and helped my dad, and Elvin Newcomer owned the business then, and he was going on vacation. So I went down there to help them. And so while I was down there and had to make a delivery of some chicken feed down to Alex Wancha Jr. down on Johnson Road.
Johnson Road.
And so I delivered it down there, and he says, we was talking, and he says, what you doing? I said, well, after today, I'm not doing anything. He says, well, would you like to help me out being a plumber? I said, well, I haven't got anything else to do, so I'll be down Monday morning. And that started it off.
Tell us a little bit about Alex Wancha Jr. and Alex Wancha Sr. and he had a sister also, Thelma Wanscha.
That's right. Dudas.
Now, Dudas, Thelma Dudas, right? She married one of the two Dudas boys.
Charlie.
Charlie Dudas. And then the other Dudas boy married Bernice Lutz.
Louis.
Louis
Dudas,
Dudas
yeah.
married Bernice Lutz.
Right.
Now, the old Wanchas lived down on 548, which was at
That
that
brick-
time
brick house right
brick
there in the
house
corner.
on the corner by the brickyard.
Yes.
And then Alex Wancha then moved over there to Johnson Road just before you go around the curve, and
Right.
he lives way, way back in.
Right.
He was a plumber, a very good plumber, as a matter of fact, and a wonderful person. I've known him for many, many years. He used to sell Deming pumps as well. Now, the reason I'm bringing all of this up is that the Wanchas had a long relationship with Wadsworth as
Oh,
well.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And they pulled themselves up by the bootstraps to do the kinds of things that they did at his plumbing and all of that. And they had a big plumbing operation.
Yes.
And you became part of that. Now tell us the first kinds of things that you had to do as a plumber. And then I'd like to have you go back to the injector and ask you some questions about that as well. What were the first things that you had to do as a plumber so different from what we do today?
Well, the first thing you had to do was pay attention.
And you were able to do that, Louis?
Was Mr. Wanchia, it was not the one to expound too much
No.
about whatever he was doing or how he was doing it. You had to watch.
It was very
You didn't
quiet.
ask too many questions because that irritated him too. So I had got so that I could foresee what he was up to, and I had to beat him by the gun, you know, and he liked that.
And Alex, however, was quite talkative.
Yes, especially the senior.
No, the boy.
Boy, oh yes.
He was quite talkative. The old
Oh.
man was not talkative.
Not too much, but if he could outwork you, and I was like 21 or 22, and he was probably 65, but he could work me under the table. And the only time I could get a rest from him was to start talking about fishing.
Well, he liked that.
He liked to talk
He
about
liked that.
fishing.
What kinds of pipes did you use in those days?
Galvanized pipe.
Galvanized as compared to today. And tell us the difference between what you had to do with galvanized pipe and what you do today with copper pipe and plastic pipe.
Well, we used galvanized pipe 51 years ago. In fact, we used it for years and years before that. And you had to cut and thread it, tighten it up, dope it up, pull it tight, build up your muscles.
And it was very heavy.
And some of the pipe, the 2-inch pipe, yeah.
The 2-inch pipe's very heavy. And as compared particularly to
Oh, yeah.
plastic, I mean, which
Oh.
is, I mean, you can take a whole handful of plastic
Sure.
pipes and with one hand.
Yep.
And in one of the things that I think that everyone in Wadsworth knows about you, Louis, is the fact that you've probably been in every house in Wadsworth one time or another.
Well, I've been in a few.
A few of them, you surely have. Do you remember any large jobs that you plumbed?
Probably the biggest commercial job I had was out here for Jaffe Shoe Company in this side of Seville,
Seville.
where's Diebolt now.
Right, it's on the south side of the road, almost
Yeah.
to the
Almost to the corner.
concurrence of Route 3 and
Yes.
97.
Right. That was one of them, and the other one was Sharon Ornamental Iron in Medina was a big job because we had a processing plant there, and we had acid, we had air conditioning for the acid because if it overheated, and had big stainless steel vats, and some of them were heated, and big boiler, 1,400,000 boiler, big job.
1,400,000 gallons?
BTU.
Oh, BTU, boiler. That was a big job. You were in plumbing then for how long?
Well, I've been in the plumbing trade for about 51 years.
51 years. But I mean at that point with Wanchas.
Oh, with Wancha, I was there from 48 to 51. Then I went to work for Fuzz Long, Leslie Long.
Leslie Long, right?
But
Fuzz Long.
everybody knows him as Fuzz.
Tell us a little bit about Fuzz Long, where he was, what he did, and what he did after he got out of plumbing and all of that.
Well, first off, he was a helper for Alex Wancha Sr.
That's right.
And then he went to work on his own. And I don't know just when he started on his own, that I never remembered, or he didn't tell me. So then I worked for him until 66, 15 years, and I went on my own.
Now, where was Fuzz Long at the time, or Leslie Long?
Where's
Wesley Long, rather.
732 South Main,
Way, way, way down.
right at corner of Johnson's
Corners, right.
Yep.
And
Johnson Road.
Johnson Road, I'm sorry, yeah, not Johnson's Corners, you're right, Johnson Road. What became of his place down there?
His daughter has it, and we had that building in the back, and I guess the husband used it to play with cars. And I don't know, I haven't been back there only once since he passed away.
What did, Fuzz is gone too now, of course.
Oh, yes, but yes.
Old Mr. Wanchi is gone.
Yes.
But
Junior's still around.
Alex Jr. is still around.
Wanchi
Right.
Bachi.
What?
Wanchi Banchi.
Wanchi Banchi, right.
Bachi.
Bachi, right. Now, what do you remember what Fuzz Long did after he retired from plumbing?
Well, he had that pizza place across the street. And that was what he did afterwards.
Well, I mean that little kind of a
Across the street from it.
fast
Yep.
food, whatever it was.
Yep.
And now what is that today?
Church.
A church, right. I remember when they were zoning for that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, do you remember? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, he had went around and got some signatures from all the people around there that he was going to put in an ice cream shop and some bread and whatever, you know, a little convenient thing. Then he says that the people was wanting pizza. So then we put in a pizza oven. Then the fellows wanted beer with the pizza, so he built on a thing for beer and a thing there. And wasn't too well accepted, I guess.
Surely wasn't. I remember this would have been in the mid-50s, late 50s?
Latter 50s, yes.
Latter 50s.
Yep.
And a lot of controversy over that one. Now, you were not working for him at the time, right?
I was working for him at the time.
You were working
Oh,
for him
yeah.
at the time. Then you left him after the 15 years. You left
Yeah,
him and
well,
you
he
went on
quit.
your own.
He quit.
Oh, he quit.
He quit.
Okay, then you
Then
went on
then
your
I
own
took
after.
a week's vacation and started my own business.
And where did you start your own business? And tell us a little bit about that. But before you do, I want to go back to the injector. With whom did you work in the injector?
When?
With whom?
With whom? Well, it was Guy Razor that had run the machine right there next to me there, the pipe machine. And Eleanor Pfeiffer was in back of me. And then my boss was Harley Fetzer.
Harley Fetzer.
Yeah, and one night one of the things fell out of the thing and then went around and got into the other one. I said, Fetzer, I says, hey, I need a day ticket. I said, this thing just creeped off here and jumped in this other head, you know. He looks up at it, you know, he says, Graffy, he says, you got to be like a potato, all eyes. I says, I was watching it all the way in. Yeah, there was Snyder. Snyder, he was the first shift boss. And
Which Snyder was that?
I really can't tell you. He was a short fella, but he was a first shift boss. And then Mager, big tall Mager. He
Which,
was the
Jim
assistant.
Mager?
Probably was.
Jim?
Yeah, he was the assistant. And then I had a time study from Granger. He was my cousin, and I can't think of his name right off the handle here, but I might think about it.
Oh, I'm sure you will, if it's your cousin particularly. Go back to where you started your business and tell us where it was and who some of the people were that worked with you and all of that.
Well, I started in '66, and I started at 746 Highland Avenue, which was my residence.
746 Highland Avenue.
Yep. And
In 1966.
right. And, you know, of course, running a business out of your residence wasn't just quite the holy thing to do, but you have to do what you have to do with the finances you have to do it with, so I swear I stayed. And then, later on, and I happened to be up the Dutch pantry having a coffee, and Al Staub was sitting next to me there, you know.
Let's spell Al Staub's name and then we can go into that family. S-T-A-U-B, right. And tell us who Al Staub was and what his relationship to hardware and plumbing was in Wadsworth.
Okay, he was the superintendent down at the OIC. And he had
Superintendent of
the maintenance.
maintenance,
And then
right.
he had the hardware store, and he started little by little by little by little.
And where was that hardware store?
At Clark's Quarters.
Right around the corner on
where
the south?
Gundersons are now.
Right, Gunderson's.
Yeah.
And when we write this history, in the year 2014, Gunderson's may not be there. So how about giving us a geographical location of where that store was?
Well, just right around the curve on the left-hand side, past the Atomic Bar.
Okay, and
That may not be
there
here either.
right? But it's a small building, and as a matter of fact, the curve may not be here.
True, I
time.
understand they want to straighten that out.
They want to
too.
straighten that out. So it would be on what is
South.
not, would probably be the Let's see if there's anything else that we could identify
That
there.
church main office is right there west of it.
Yeah, but that might not be there too. It would be south of Reimer Road and just a little bit west of High Street. So
On High Street,
on the
west of
curve,
State.
on the curve. And what was the name of that store?
Well, they called it Wadsworth Supply.
Wadsworth Supply.
And then when I bought it, and I changed the name to Wadsworth Hardware and Supply so that it would denote what kind of supply I had.
Right.
And I was there a couple, 3 years or so, and then I moved to downtown.
Okay, now, you ran into Mr. Staub at the Dutch Pantry.
Dutch Pantry, we were just having a coffee, you know, and then I had already had a word that he was thinking about selling. So I just turned to him and says, you know, whenever you're thinking about selling the hardware, I says, give me a call.
Okay,
Call come quicker than I thought I would. Wasn't prepared, but got myself prepared.
got yourself prepared. Louis, how about telling us the lineage from Al Staub all the way down to his son, and what happened to his son, and maybe his granddaughters?
Well, I don't know too much about the family other than he was the only son, I think. I don't think he had any daughters or anything.
No, don't think so.
And he was in the pump business, repairing, drilling wells. And but he was come to his demise down here in Clearview Acres in a sewer cave-in. They had dug the ditch for that sewer in the morning, and it was in woods. And of course, ground is a little bit loose in the woods. It's not tight like it is other places. And they were down 14 feet or better. And this Don Dressler Jr. that has worked for me a couple times also was working and helping Staub at that day. And he had been down in the hole preceding that. And he had to go to bowl, otherwise he'd been the one down there.
And tell us what happened.
Well, the wall caved in and he was standing straight up, as I understand, and just come right in around him.
And who was that?
That was Gene.
Gene
The boy.
Staub,
The
who was
boy.
Al Staub's son.
Son, right.
And that happened probably, what, 30 years ago?
I really couldn't tell you for sure about that.
Somewhere close to that. 25 to
Yes,
30
I was
years ago.
probably at the north end, yeah, probably that many, yes.
25 to 30 years ago. And do you remember any of the horrible details about how they tried to rescue him and so forth?
Well, the one person, I guess, that dug the ditch was there, but he couldn't do it. And they called Dick Thompson. And then I think he come down there and dug him out.
It was horrible.
I can imagine.
Gene Staub was at my house the day before. And Gene Staub said, I'll be glad to dig that little trench for you. It's a little trench we were putting in a water service. And I said, and I was young at the time, and I said, well, you know, I really wouldn't need to have that because with a 4-inch spade, I can just go down there a mile a second and I can just put that in. But I asked him how much it would cost. Well, $1.25 a foot. Well, you know, in those days, $1.25 was more than I was prepared to pay when I could do it myself, and I did. As a matter of fact, I felt so bad about it afterwards that when I did make that ditch with that little spade, I timed myself and I did the whole thing in 45 minutes. It was 100 feet long, so you know it was not very
Well,
long.
you're the kind of person that likes to take this job on physical.
Yes.
And when you know in your mind that you can do this job, then you want to do it.
Yes, and I did it.
And it doesn't hurt you.
But I don't know how many times I thought to myself, if I would have had him do that, he would not have been in that ditch. But then I thought to myself, if he wouldn't have been in that ditch, then
Somebody else would.
somebody else would have. And I really felt bad about that.
Yeah, you never know where you're going to be at the right time, and that's an essence, to be in the right place at the right time. And
Now,
not to
Gene
be-
Staub married one of the Howard girls, right?
I couldn't tell you.
yes.
Marilyn's her name, yeah.
Marilyn Howard, married Marilyn Howard.
Yep.
And then they had 3 daughters, and the oldest one just recently was married. She was a student of mine at the university some years ago, just a lovely person. I haven't heard from her for 20 years or so, but just a wonderful person.
Yep.
the whole family. You then went into business up there in the North End. Who were some of the people who worked for you at the North End?
Well, my oldest boy worked for me, Bill, and Tom, of course, was in school, and he worked for me on the weekends. He'd come in there.
Tom was the baby at the
Yeah,
time.
he was 9.
9.
But he had a photogenic mind. He knew where more things were in that store than I did. I'd ask him, I said, hey, Tom, where's so-and-so? You know, and he'd tell him a color box or whatever, you know, and he'd take you right to it. In fact, one day, Mr. Fix come in with his lawnmower handle, and he wanted it fixed, you know, and I was busy with something else, and Tom said, I'll take care of it. So he takes the thing. He goes to the back room where we had the bench and whatever, and I hear him banging, banging, banging. I thought, holy smokers, I want to be in for a set of handles here for sure. So I go back to there and I stick my head around the corner. I said, need any help? He says, I'm doing all right. So I go, he did all right. Fixed it up for the superintendent of schools.
You bet. I
So
met
he's still,
motivation
he's
was
still
very
good
strong.
at it. He's
at that
still
time.
good at it.
He's very good at it. As a matter of fact, he's very, very good at it. Your 2 sons worked there, and who else worked there? Anybody else? Any outsiders?
I had several school children that were seniors, and a few of them couldn't get along with their parents, and I could get along with them, and I could get them to understand. A couple of them was, one was Dan. No, I wasn't exactly right, Dan. He's electrical engineer for Florida Power.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's got about 40 electricians under him. He comes here to town. He's related to Wheeler up on West Street.
Uh-huh.
I know his name. I can't think of it. Then
Well, it'll come to you.
Don Darling.
Don Darling.
He worked for me up there, and I had several girls and some girls from Barberton, secretaries, and in the plumbing company. Then I had Raleigh Wiggins working for me, and Don Dressler Jr. and Bob Oswald, and quite a few other the guys. And they'd always pitch in every once in a while if we needed them.
Quite a few people. One of the things that you maintained throughout this entire episode of owning hardware stores was your plumbing business.
That was the crux of it.
That was the base of everything that you did, the plumbing
Yep.
business. And to this day, that's what you still do. Now, in the meantime, you did something else too in life that was very important in terms of helping people with, well, say for instance, keeping their houses nice and comfortable. What was that?
Heating?
Heating. Tell us what you did with heating, and tell us some of the stories that everyone in town knows about, but I'd like to put them in history.
Oh, there's so many of them encounters that I've had with that there'd be so numerous to mention. You went out day and night. I had to give up doing oil furnaces because between that and gas and running a business, running hardware, I had to give up something. So I gave up the oil, which was, there were more problems than the gas. You just walk in and fix it, and you walk away and you know you're done. Oil is not that way. Sometimes it gets a different change of oil, you know, and then away it goes to whack again. But so you get out there, many nights cold. I worked from on New Year's Day from 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 at night. Started off with a headache and had a bigger one when the day was over. But I stick with it.
You stood with it, stayed with
Wow.
it. Now, what about, you know, in heating, almost all heating problems come at the coldest day. Do you remember any stories about snowstorms and things of this nature?
I had, one night I got called up to the north end of town where he's retired from the post office now. He's a ham operator. And his furnace was out. So I went up there, and on the way up there, I run into the city electric truck. And he says, you can't get up there. It's too ruddy and snowy, you know. I said, I got to get up there and fix that furnace. So it was slush and it was rough. And I got up there, but I only got just to the curb because there was about a 5-foot snowdrift. So I walked up, fixed the furnace, come back the next morning, the truck was out of commission for all day. It was just loaded with ice up underneath it, froze up.
You couldn't get it out, your truck out.
At Methodist Church one Sunday, they called me up that a couple of the pumps were down and they couldn't hold church. It was cold in there and whatever. So I took a half an hour digging myself out of the driveway, got down there, got the thing fixed, and they called church off. I think it's the first time it was ever called off.
They called the church off.
Yeah, well, I had it fixed and going, but they
Now, had they not
nobody was
called the
there.
church off, would you have gone in there to do a little
Oh,
praying?
I was there anyhow.
You were there anyway.
I had it all finished up by the time they decided to close it up.
I mean, if they would have had church, would you gone in there for a little bit of,
Oh, yeah.
oh, you would have gone in for that, huh?
I went down to Lutheran church one time when I was ready to go someplace. They called me up, so I had to go down there. A lot of times I was getting ready to go someplace, I'd be down there in my suit, I was trying to fix this thing. One place was down here to Mel Long's, had a gas leak down there. He had one. Wouldn't have been much longer, it would have been gone.
What happened, and how did you get
Well, it
involved with
was a company here in town, I can't mention any names, but they didn't tighten the gas connection.
I see.
And it was about 6 foot away from a pilot for a boiler.
Wow.
Yep. And then we've had these torrential rains we had here that one time when it rained night and day, whatever you done, everybody's basement was clear up to the windows. Rippman, same way. Throw a pump in there and go back in a couple hours. You couldn't even see the furnace.
Tell us about the move from the north end to downtown and what you had to do to get the building where you are, and then that's going to lead us into some of your civic activities.
When I moved, I talked with Dick Varney and Lloyd Maxon about moving and whatever.
Now, why those
But,
two? Why Dick and Lloyd?
Well, because I knew them well and I knew their mechanics. And I knew I could get along with them. I knew they'd do as they said they'd do, and I did do what I said they'd do. So when we had our little meeting up there with the attorney and decided that we're going to make a move, I went down and looked this building over that I'm in now. And then I had I was with Service Star at the time, and I had Service Star come on and evaluate it, and they said, yeah, it'd fit. So I says, okay, we're going to move. So I told those boys, I says, now, we're going to move from here to the downtown. So everybody pitched in. The truck would come for delivery. I'd throw some stuff on his truck and tell him to deliver it downtown. We moved in 1 month. We never closed either door, and it cost me $5,000
To move.
to move.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
It's real good.
It's really good.
And they tore off the walls, moved them down there and put them up. That was, well, Tuck Pfeiffer was working for them then. Well, he was working too with them. And Lauren Spice was in there. A few of the old contractors that I knew come in and they'd all work on it. And then they said we'd have an open tab down there to the Blue Onion so they could go down there to eat.
And that's what cost the $5,000, you think?
No, I didn't. Yeah, no, I was over and above that.
You mentioned the Blue Onion. We have not had anybody talk about the Blue Onion on the program. Tell us about the Blue Onion and where it started and how it started and so forth.
Holmesbrook Supply was in that building when I remember it. Maybe there was something else in there before that, but
I think that it was
Beginning.
originally theirs, yeah.
and so then they moved down to where they are now, and so it was Bill Kleckner and Jack Halvey were the two principals in the Blue Onion, and they gutted it, remodeled it, and whatever, and it really was the place to go anytime. Had music in there, they had a lot of entertainment in there, there was all local people in there. Everybody had a good time, and it's a shame when it went down. But I was just down there today for lunch, and it still working good.
The Blue Onion is now something else. But
Called
it's
The Ordinary Place.
The Ordinary Place.
Yep.
It's had several changes
Yeah.
of hands
Oh,
over the
yeah.
past 30, 35 years.
Yep.
Now, going back to the store then, you opened the store downtown, and incidentally, you just mentioned the Holmesbrook Supply, which of course are your competitors, but there's no such thing as competitors in Wadsworth. You people get along very well, do you not? Mm-hmm. All of the...
Yeah, everybody does.
Everyone gets along very, very well.
Have to in a small town.
That's true. Now, one of the reasons that happens, the fact that you all get along well, is the fact that there is a downtown association. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons. There are probably other reasons as well. Tell us your involvement in the downtown association, what you did with them, and some of the battles you've had to fight. And I think everyone knows that you're quite a fighter.
We take them on.
You take them on. You don't care who they are either,
No,
right?
we don't care.
I'd like to hear some of those wonderful stories that you've told time and time again.
Well,
about
some of them I can tell and some I can't.
Well, the ones you can't tell, we can't tell. But you tell us the ones you can tell us.
Well, I was involved with what they called the Downtown Center Merchants because at the time the Chamber of Commerce was a little bit on the tipsy side, and of course, you know, they were for the whole scope of things. And we are individuals down here, and we have to have different kind of treatment. So we formed our own little downtown association. Which when they have a meeting, you know, there was maybe 5, 6 at the meeting or something like that. We took out the parking meters. We'd hashed it over several times, and
Can you tell us about that battle?
well, the Mayor Gottwald, Uncle Earl, I call him.
Uncle Earl. You have a pet name for everybody, don't you?
Oh yeah, Chico or whatever comes up. So then I knew that he was set to get rid of these things, I think, and I just need a little nudging. So when I happened to walk in, they was on about the 4th list, you know, when I got there, and they said, "Oh, parking meters." I says, "That's it. Secretary write a letter to the mayor. We want them out." And they're out.
That was it.
That was it.
Those parking meters went in 1947.
I don't know, I got one ticket the first time I was in town, and I was after I got out of the service, and I went down to the show. I parked there with Citizens Bank, and it was probably 7 o'clock or something like that, so I went to the show. I comes back, I get a ticket. Counted as number 10. That was Charlie Cole. You know what my son's number is? 10.
10. Your son,
My
who was a
boy.
policeman,
Yeah.
right? Of course, you didn't argue with Charlie Cole, did you?
Oh, I might have had a little conversation with him, but it was probably about football.
Now, the parking meters went in, as I say, in 1947, and they came out when? And as a result
Oh,
of
I
what?
really can't tell you what date it was when they come out.
And the reason they came out was actually because of the...
We were just pushing it.
Now, Louis, is it true that you were the one behind the beautification of downtown Wadsworth?
You're leading me on, I think, Doc. This old boy pretty coy, you know. I ain't got this far without knowing something.
Tell us about the downtown
Well, I had I tell you, I put I think $385 into that niche, you know, to start it off with, okay? And they had a couple meetings which I didn't get to attend, which I should have, but I didn't have a chance to get to them or whatever happened until all of a sudden up it come.
That was the downtown renovation.
Mm-hmm. And of course they'd kind of let it deplete down there pretty bad for reasons. So I had a lot of the downtown owners at Wirus, you know, talking about they don't want this, they didn't want that, they don't want this, they don't want that, you know. So I didn't own any property, but I was running front there anyhow, so I told him, I says, "I'll tell you what, tonight when we have this meeting," I says, "I'm going to bring my attorney, Phil Croyle, and we're going to discuss this." And before the meeting got underway, I says, "This is my attorney, Phil Croyle. He's come down here to help us with this problem." I says, "Now, and all the rest of you people are not saying nothing. You're not going to say nothing to anybody at City Hall because we have this attorney for that reason." So they didn't know that when we went to that meeting with about 15, 20, or 5 or 30 of us that night. We had them right there. They couldn't budge because we had the deciding vote.
You had the deciding vote.
Yeah, they couldn't budge unless they had cracked one of us for a few more points.
Now tell us what a little more specifically. What was your game plan?
Sometimes it's called control.
Control?
If we don't have control of our destiny, we're nobody.
Well, that's very true. But what were you trying to control at that point? You did or did not want the downtown to be renovated?
I don't say that we didn't want it to be renovated. We wanted to be renovated in a way that would benefit us.
Benefit you.
But
And
as
what
it
were
was,
some?
but as it was, we lost some parking, which I was highly against. In fact, I told one of the persons, I says, "You know," I says, "your father-in-law built a parking area, and now he sees what we're doing to the town." I says, "He may turn over in his grave."
You told somebody from the city that, right?
And I wasn't from the
Oh,
city.
from the city, I see.
It was one of the boys downtown.
One of the boys downtown. You lost some parking areas. Now then, they did renovate the downtown, and you did lose some parking areas, but you went along with that, did you not?
Well, I made more money on it than the rest of them.
And how's that?
Well, we had the sewers and the buildings to change because they weren't up to code. We had water lines to put in, and a few other things that had to be done that I...
And you sold them the stuff.
I was right there. Plus, I was selling stuff to the people that were doing the work out on the streets. I was making it on both ends, but you never want to let all of it out.
Who did the work out there?
I really can't tell you what it is. They were foreign people. They was all workers.
They did a beautiful job.
They didn't do bad.
No, they did a nice job there. What other kinds of involvements have you had downtown?
Signage.
Okay, tell us about signage too.
I can't tell you too much about that.
Well, tell us what you can.
Well, as you know, as being a professor and a doctor of certain things, that you have certain things you have to do. Certain things have to be done to become an end. And if those things don't come to that end, you're out. So I'm trying to fight for the persons that are there, that will be there after I'm gone. Really don't make hay to me now, because I'm not going to be there that much longer. But I always like to help the little doggy that can't help himself to get where he has to get. And when somebody kind of dictates to me about how I'm to run my business, he's in the wrong boat.
The wrong boat.
Because I didn't fight for this country to have somebody tell me how to run my business, and I can't do this and can't do that.
And signage was one of those things.
Signage is one. If you got to have that signage out there, as I told one councilman here just the other day, I says, you walk over to the Summit Mall, I says, you look in the windows, I says, what do you see? And why do you think he has it there? Plain and simple. I should have not to explain to him why. I got him rattled up a little right now, but they'll come around.
Now, what do you have against the signage?
Well, I don't have anything against the signage other than they have against the signage. I've had some of them tell me, well, it's because the drug mart over there's got prescription drugs clear across their window there. Well, they says that, so that the cops can't see in there. I said, well, they'd have to have an 8-foot step ladder to see in there if the things was uncovered. I said, do they carry a ladder in the car? Okay, we got a lot of them that's not thinkers.
Louis, you've had your, I guess you would probably be considered in history as the downtown philosopher. People walk into your store and you philosophize with them. And if you want to philosophize, if they don't happen to walk into your store, you seek them out and you philosophize with them. Is this fun for you, or is this something that, why do we do it?
Well,
everyone loves you for it, but why do we do it?
I do it for, you could call it enjoyment.
It's an enjoyment.
Or you could call it to better myself with them. When you know what I know about then we can get along better. Just like I know you're a hard worker and you'd rather do this. And I say, well, I could do it for you, but I know you want to do it yourself. Okay, so I don't argue with that point because I know that's how you are. So that's how you learn about different people and their idiosyncrasies.
What are some of the things that you have really taken issue with and made it very well known, say for instance in the city, in city government?
Here we've got catch-22 coming up. I can't divulge about all of that, but I've stepped on a few toes.
But even though you've stepped on toes, you never step on the person, right?
If I think it's necessary, I have.
You have stepped on the person.
I've had my knuckles right up under their nose already.
Right up under the nose.
You betcha. That was the last fiasco. We won that one.
Do you want to tell us about that one?
No, I won't have to. That's over the water's over the dam.
That's water over the dam right now.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the hardware business. how has it changed dramatically? Or, we talked about the fact that the plumbing business changed dramatically from galvanized pipe to copper pipe to plastic pipe. I have no idea what's in the future, but I suspect it'll be something like that. But how has, one of the things I was thinking of just here is, just as I was saying plastic pipe, maybe one of these days there won't be any need for fittings because they just might have tubes going along.
Well, that's what they do now. It's called Wiersbo.
They what?
Called Wiersbo.
Wiersbo. Now, what is that?
It's plastic piping.
And it just folds.
You just turn it right around. You run it. You don't put an elbow on it. You turn it. Just bend it.
And it works okay?
Oh yeah. My boy put it in his house. He got 5 bathrooms in it. It's just a fitting that you have a collar, slip over to the pipe, slip this fitting inside of the pipe, and clear it like that, and that expands it. You pull the tool out, slip the fitting in. It's got a memory, and it goes right down to memory. It's tight. It's done.
And it's done.
Turn the water on.
And it's made out of plastic.
Yeah, I can't install it because I'm not licensed to install it.
You have to have the license to install it.
You're supposed to have.
So we've gone from galvanized all the way up
Copper.
to, well, as a matter of fact, do you remember lead pipe at all?
Oh, sure.
We
We got some of that in town, too.
Do we have some in town?
Mm-hmm. But I'm not talking.
You're not talking. We go from lead pipe all the way to, what do you call the Spursbo?
Wiersbo.
Wiersbo, all the way to Wiersbo.
Well, we went from lead pipe to galvanized pipe to steel pipe to copper pipe to CPVC, PVC, and now Wiersbo. And we had a Quest in between that.
What is Quest?
Quest, that's another plastic, but that's the one that had the ring, and you took a pair of pliers and squeezed it, and that compressed it on there. Had a lot of problems with it, a lot of lawsuits and whatever.
So you don't use that anymore? Don't use Quest anymore?
No.
What about the hardware store now? What about hardware? Not the hardware store, but what about hardware? How has that changed dramatically? And how, I can remember going into the hardware stores, there'd be great big bins, Hoagland's Hardware, and when Perk was there, and even in your store, big bins of big nails and all of that,
Yep.
and so
We
forth.
still got the bins.
You still have the bins?
We use them in the back.
But how have we changed the marketing of hardware?
Well, the material itself has not changed too much other than new drills, saws, that kind of stuff. Basically, it's all pretty much the same kind of stuff, but fasteners and whatever have more pieces now instead of just screws and whatever. There's all kinds of screws. And they even got screws you can screw right into the concrete. After you drill a hole, of course.
You drill a hole and then you put the screws right
Screw
in the
right in,
concrete,
you don't put
and they
nothing
work
else.
really well.
Oh, yeah. Yep, they work well.
What about the expense of hardware?
It used to be that years ago that it would be like, it would only go up maybe twice a year. But that's not the case anymore in any field. Everything is...
Goes up probably every
what
week.
they do is they try to confuse you, and they have called price fixing. Otherwise, they'll run it up, they'll run it down. They'll run this up, they'll run it down. They're just doing nothing but confusing a person. They even confuses me.
And that's hard to do, isn't it, Louis?
No, that's not easy hard.
Tell us about the glass industry. Years ago, the hardware stores used to cut glass. Do we still do that?
Well, years ago, when I had the store up at the other end, Floyd was next door to my cousin. He had the glass business, Graff Glass.
Floyd Graff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's your cousin. How is
Yep.
he related to you?
Well, my dad and his dad were brothers.
Okay.
Julius. Julius Graff was his
Julius
dad.
Graff.
And then, of course, my dad and, Delmer Graff, do you remember
Yes,
him?
Delmer Graff, yes, he was
Okay,
crippled.
he was my double cousin, first cousin. His mother and my mother were sister, and his dad and my dad were brothers.
Delmer Graff had a
Music.
crippling disease, did he
Oh,
not?
I know, he had a back problem. I don't know what he died from. I was down in Biloxi when he died.
He what?
I was down in Biloxi when he passed away.
But you remember, he did have a problem, did he not? Delmer
Well, a
Graff?
little bit, yeah.
Nice
That's-
person.
that's right.
He would be about 78 years old now if he were living.
Oh, he'd be more than that.
Do you think a little older than that?
Yeah, I'm 72, and he'd been in close to 85 probably.
Oh, really? I didn't think he'd be that old.
Well, he looked young.
Yeah, he was quite young. We want to get to Lloyd Graff here in a couple of seconds, but you reminded me of something here, Louis, that we didn't do, and that is to take your family on down through your children. We mentioned 2 of them, and we'd like to know what they're doing.
Well, my oldest boy, his name's William Lewis, and he works for Wolf Brothers in Worcester. He works on the counter down there in plumbing sales, heating sales, and whatever. And then Richard LeGrand, he's the patrolman on third shift for the Wadsworth PD.
Right. And the word LeGrand actually is your real name, is it not?
Yes.
LeGrand Graff.
But it's spelled, they spell it around here L-A-G-R-A-N-D-E, but on my birth certificate it's L-A-G-R-A-N-D.
Oh, really? LeGrand?
Yeah, because my first and second grade school teacher, Mrs. Call, was my cousin also, and she evidently had French when she went to college. So she thought my name ought to be French, so it's French.
So
But I have no French in
that
me.
took care of that. You didn't have to
Yeah.
go to court or anything. She took care
No,
of it.
but when I went in the service, I had to sign my name 8 times, and my name was with a little G, because they was writing it both ways. So when it comes payday, you know, everything has to be on the line, in the box, correctly spelled, or no pay.
You could not go over the box, that's right.
Yep.
I can still remember when I first went to the service that my birth certificate was different, the spelling was different from my, the way that I spelled it, because
Yep.
the first grade teacher changed my name spelling, the spelling of my name.
Yep, that can
And I
happen.
kept it through C-A-E-S-A-R, whereas it was originally C-E-S-A-R-E, same word, but
Yep,
it was
different
spelled
spelling.
differently. And I had to get Ruth Hollinger, who was an old neighbor of ours, to testify that that was my name. And then after we had that, about 25 years later, we found that the birth certificate was wrong because it had the wrong birth date. The Army never questioned that. But they did question my name because, of course, you have to sign for your checks and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me, you have 3 sons, right?
Yes.
And we've had all 3 of them. Now, he is, LeGrand is, we don't call him LeGrand, though, do we? What do we call him?
Louis.
Louis, same as yours, right? Louis is a patrolman on
No, Richard you're talking about. there.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Richard,
it's
yes.
Dick. That's
Yeah.
Dick.
Yeah, Dick.
Yeah.
Dick is on the patrol,
Yeah.
and he's a policeman here in Wadsworth. And how long has he been a policeman?
I think he's been on about 18 years. But he had about 3 years auxiliary before that. So he's about 20 years of it.
Yeah. Now, how does this work where you sometimes get mad at the policeman? Now, what do you do?
I take him on.
You take him on?
No, yeah. I don't hold back.
You don't care whether your son is on there or not? No.
It's not the idea, it's the principle of the deal.
That's the principle of the whole thing.
Right or wrong, it's the
And
principle.
right or wrong, yes, that's a good way of looking
Well, I
at
even
it.
talked to the safety director about it too.
And I'm sure you would. Oh, I'm
yeah.
positive
In the
you would.
mornings, we have a little session every once in a while.
And you talk to him about it. Now, your youngest son is
Tom,
Tom, and Tom is approximately how old now? About 30, what,
I think he's about 30. Let's see, he was born in 64.
64?
Well,
So
he's a little older.
34.
Yeah.
34 years old, and he is doing what?
He owns and runs the Graff Plumbing and Heating,
And where is that located?
131 College.
In your store, right?
Yes.
And he runs that and takes care of it and so forth.
Yep.
Highly educated young man, is he not?
He's not bad.
Yes, highly educated.
He's smarter than he should be somewhere else besides what he's doing.
Well,
he's got the brains to do better.
Let me just say that most plumbers make much more than people in academia.
Yep.
All of the family then is involved with hardware one way or the other. Did you ever in your lifetime, when you were growing up there in Granger Township, think that the whole family would be hardware people?
No.
Because what did you do as a young boy?
I was a farming boy.
A farming boy. And the farms in those days were just absolutely hard work.
Was not much mechanical work there.
Nothing, all hard work. How many acres did you have?
60.
60 acres and a
Which
team
was
of
a real
horses.
small.
Pardon?
Which was real small.
Small, yeah, but still
Well, at that time, it was pretty decent. Nowadays, you couldn't do nothing with it.
not a thing.
No.
And they had a team of horses, or maybe 2.
3.
3 teams of horses.
No. 3 horses
Oh, you had 3 horses.
and a mule
3 horses and a mule, and
and a pony
a pony. And probably all of your plowing was done with a sulky at the very best, or perhaps following
by
it
hand plow
by hand plow.
until the last 3 years. Then we had a tractor.
And you had a tractor at that time. But as far as you were concerned, that's what you probably were going to do. Went to the service, changed your mind, came back, went to the injector, then you went into hardware. Now, the reason
No, I went into plumbing.
Pardon me?
Went into
Plumbing, yes. The reason I'm bringing this up is that one of the great features that you have that very few people have is that when you say something, you can base it upon your own personal experiences, and the experiences that you have had have been all very solid experiences. dealing with people, dealing with mechanical things, dealing with farmers and so forth. So, you know, it's probably fitting that you should be the downtown philosopher. But tell us, Louis, and if you don't mind bragging a little bit, you've taken on some issues which are not related to mechanics or plumbing or farming or anything like that. Is that right?
That'll give me a hint.
Well,
What are you trying to field here?
let's say government.
Local or national?
Both, but let's
State.
let's take local. Take local. You've never have had any experience in that. Is that correct?
In government?
Yeah, in government.
No, I'm too intelligent.
You're too intelligent. But you have been very helpful to many, many people in government in Wadsworth.
Oh, sure.
And tell us what it is that makes you that avant-garde in trying to get a point across like that.
Well, I've been around a long time. I've watched and seen a lot of things happen. And a lot of things that I see that doesn't like that way it happened, I guard against that to happen again. I like to see things that are fair and square, and cheating is not one of my games. And you might as well rob for me as to cheat, because they're both the same in my category.
Well, surely. Mm-hmm.
So with that way, I kind of like to be the forerunner on some of these issues that they try to pull by people that are not too astute. And they try to get off on these wild games like down there at the Center Merchants, you know, they're going to put a pile of sand down there, you know, let the kids come down, you know, and play around in the sand. Well, I took offense to the part that they closed off the downtown. Literally closed the downtown down for a circus and parade and baloney in the square on Saturday, a business day. A day that you want to bring people downtown to your store, and they need to come down to the store and need to get a way to get into it. And to have it blocked off, I think we did more disharmony that way than any good that we could have done. Finally, the second time they tried to pull that stunt, they got a letter from the mayor's wife about it, about their actions on that. I had them say that they was going to put a pile of sand down there for kids and whatever. And I says, no, I says, I won't tolerate that. I says, what I want you to do is to go back and do like our old downtown Center Merchants did by having this flea market. And I says, get that back on the boards and get doing it. I said, there was 5 or 6 of us before down there handled the job. The lady from the record shop over there, Posey, which is Barlat, and Ray down there, Ray at the Western Auto, Sharkey's, both Mr. and Mrs. Sharkey and John and myself, and then Hunnert occasionally, and we run the ball game ourselves, and it was very successful. In fact, I had a neighbor that huckhursted that stuff, and so he kind of...
Ray Morton.
Well, no.
Lorton.
Yeah, Morton was the one, yeah. So I had him to do that again, and it was successful. We're going to have another one here come, I think it's in August. They'll watch the papers.
Right. Now we're going to run out of time quickly, and I wanted to pick your brain about all of the people in Wadsworth who were in merchants in Wadsworth, whom you remember, and probably are no longer around, and what their contributions were. Do you remember those people?
Oh, yeah, I remember Klein's that were over there, had a clothing store on the west side of Main Street. East side of Main Street, and the Ladrick and the Miller Jones. Harry
Wyrick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can't forget Harry. He's
No.
my golf partner. Got to
That's
take
right.
care of Harry. And Curtis is across the street, and Abrams, and Fred Allen, and Dick, and Bill Snoke, and
Dick Krause and Bill
oh
Snow.
yeah, Dick Krause, Bill Stoke. I can't think of the right-hand man right there. Dean Eicher.
Dean Eicher.
Yeah, he was in there. Dale Woods, And you got grocery
Barber?
store in the corner, Dale Woods, yeah, the barber. In fact, we put this plumbing and heating in there, and after we was done, we had a little party downstairs.
A little
It was
party
nice,
after you got the-
nice one, nice little party.
Nice little party downstairs. What were some of these people, what do you remember specifically about some of these people who were, you know, someone said the other day that it's so wonderful that we can have a parade and put your blankets out the night before and never worry about anyone taking them. And that's probably been going on for the past 20, 25 years, whatever, that we've had
Right.
the Blue Tip Festival. What can you say, excuse me, as a generality for all of these people you just mentioned? I know every single one that you mentioned. What can you say about them as far as the conviviality or the fraternity that they demonstrated toward one another and toward the people of Wadsworth?
I'll tell you what, the people of Wadsworth downtown there, especially the old batch that's been down there, that brought us up to where we are now, did it in a fine, fair fashion. They were all gentlemen, they'd all speak to you, and they'd chatter with them, and they still do. You know, Dick Curtis comes up here, Curtis occasionally, and I used to do work for their mother. They was over by the post office, and
Who was that?
his mother,
Who?
Curtis.
Oh, Dick Curtis.
Yeah, his mother. His
Oh, his
mother's
mother.
parents, they lived right there where the
Across from the
Sahia
po-
station. Sahia station did.
Right.
Well, it was a Sahia station, right next to the post office
Right.
where they were. And they were all fine, upstanding people.
They were good people.
Oh,
They
yeah.
they were brothers and sisters of Wadsworth, all
Oh,
of them.
yeah.
And
Oh,
you've
yeah.
helped make it that way. I have another last question that I'll ask about that, and then I have another question that I want to ask you. And of the ones whom you mentioned, and perhaps if you did not even mention some of them.
Well, there's Merriman too. That he's been there
Don
for a long
Merriman,
time. Yeah,
right?
long
He's a
time.
good man.
Yep.
Wonderful person. Which one did you look up to as kind of a mentor?
Well, Dick Curtis used to walk around in a suit and all spit and polished all the time. He always looked decent. I don't follow that track, but I stay clean, but I'm not
You
in a
stay
suit.
clean, absolutely, right. Did someone like, let's see, one of the
all of them, really. Abrams and all those bunches.
they're just a good bunch of people.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the last question I want to ask you here is to have you give us just a little bit of what you think Wadsworth has done in the past 72 years, or this, let's say from the age 21, so as an adult. What has happened in Wadsworth, and what have been some of the things that haven't happened that could have or should have?
Well, I think we have come along in a nice, slow, even pace, building upon our good fortunes. It may be getting a little bit out of hand now, to my estimation. Of course, I'm thinking different than these younger people are now. They might think it's okay, but to me, it's a little fast. But we've all had good endeavors.
Every one of them.
Yep.
The one thing that I think that you're noted for, Louis, is the fact that you are, shall we say, precipitously articulate, which means that if it's on your mind, it's right out there in front.
It don't take long.
It doesn't take long. However, I don't know that I've ever known of you to hold a grudge if a person didn't agree with you.
No, I'll have the fat with him, and we'll get right down to the brass knuckles. But then after it's over with, I've had my say that a lot of them say, "Why's your blood pressure?" I said, "Don't you worry about my blood pressure. It's fine." I've been up and down that scale many times.
You've had a legacy of being very generous to people too. I know that you won't want to talk about that, but just so that history knows that you have been a very generous person in this community. I am positive there are a lot of widows out there that if they could speak, and if they would, many of them are dead now, that I imagine, Louis, that you fixed their furnaces and probably you're still waiting for payment. Is that correct?
Well, I've left a lot of money laying in this town,
I'm sure you have.
and there's some of it that I knew that I wasn't going to get.
but that one you probably went after.
No,
But if the lady...
not really. I never was one to do that.
You didn't do that. But if a person really needed something, you were right there to help out, and I'm positive that you would have given. You've been a wonderful, wonderful addition to the Wadsworth community, and I guess we're really happy that you did come from Granger to Wadsworth, because the things that you have done, the attitudes that you have engendered. But the greatest thing is that wherever you go, if you say the name Louis Graff, everyone knows you, everyone has a really high regard for you, and everyone knows fully well that if he is wrong, you're going to tell him he is wrong, and you're going to tell him in no uncertain terms. Louis, we want to thank you, and unfortunately we have run out of time. We always run out of time in these programs. And we want to say to you, thank you very, very much for being our guest today on Wadsworth History on Film.
My pleasure.